Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Burdett with the Education Recognition Program, and today we'll be going over in Chronicle how to document minimal data. And typically with minimal data entry, this is, for instance, for programs that are using another EMR, maybe your assessment is in there, maybe even your education is in there. But you're looking for Chronicle to be able to just aggregate your data for you as far as ADA requirements. So I'll go ahead and begin by just going through what data points are required. So we'll begin here on the left, to create new patient. So we'll go ahead and see the underlying sections are required. Then we have your demographics that are required. Everything else here is not required. So, typically if this is in your other EMR and you have no need for it here, you can go ahead and just forget those sections. Click Save Changes. So now we are in the patient record. Again, on the left, what you see here is Chronicle Pro. It has the red dots. If you're not using Chronicle Pro, there will not be any red or green dots. And what we'll be going through is just the minimal data points um, to be able to aggregate your data. And just keep in mind that, what you put into Chronicle is what you get out. So there may be certain sections, even if you're doing minimal, that you want to add because you can include into reports. What we'll do is we're going to go, right from the general information plan section, right to your behavioral change objectives. Again, and this is needed in order to aggregate your behavioral goals. So you'll see here objectives. I'm going to go ahead and add a new objective. And this is what the participant has chosen. So maybe they're doing physical activity. Okay. Real world plan. This is optional, but you can put it. Expected outcome. Now you're setting the baseline. So your baseline is where they're at the time, when they chose this goal. Maybe they're just very little physical activity. Again, always your baseline when the objective was set. Go ahead and click Save Changes. All right, so now you have your baseline behavioral goal. Next, and this is pretty much like initial, during the assessment or before that the participant comes to your class. Next, you have your clinical and lab data. So here you can, enter in lab values individually, or to the right here, if you're, want to enter in multiple, you just click on a new lab sheet, enter the date, and then put in your individual labs. Well, let's just say for my participant, I'm my program, I'm tracking A1Cs, right? No, where we go? Here we go. So we'll go ahead and enter the initial value, date performed. Maybe this was why they were referred to you. All right. So now you have your lab value, your initial A1C. Again, as I mentioned, all the other fields are optional, but if this is strictly just to crunch your data for you, when it's time to come back, you would just come back to this patient chart, go to their behavioral change objectives, and then we'll see the baseline that I did initially. You're just going to go ahead and update this objective. All the information I entered there, but now you want to assess where they're at now. Maybe they're doing, 3 times a week is considered 100% for them. So they're doing great. And you can also enter your follow-up method, save changes. So now you have 2 data points for this behavioral goal. You have a baseline and a follow-up, and that will contribute to your aggregate outcomes. And now maybe, 6 months down the road or however long, it's time to, have another A1C done. You'll come back to the A1C section, add result. Let's see, they're doing awesome. All right. So now they have, a baseline and a follow-up. So they have two data points for A1C and behavioral change objectives. So now they will be included in any reports that, aggregate reports that you run through Chronicle, which could be the high level report is what I recommend. But this information will not import to your annual status reports or applications unless there is at least one education encounter documented. Again, this is strictly just to be able to be imported into applications and annual status reports. But if you're not going to use this section, you will still be able to run your reports, like your high level report, and that'll include these participants in there. For any report, you just want to be sure that you use the patient that has any encounter, such as a lab or behavioral goal, because they don't have education documented. And just to add on to that, let's say this is still minimal capacity, but maybe you do want them to be included in your applications and annual status reports. So they would just need to have a minimum of one one-on-one or group encounter in order to be included in that. So, by simply just creating a new one-on-one during this period, and it could just be initial assessment. So these two indicators here are going to be what feed to your renewal application or original application. So, we do ask how many participants we're seeing for initial versus post, and this will include them in those numbers, as well as it'll be included in your annual status report because they've had an encounter of some sort. And if the rest of your education is maybe in another EMR or some other platform, there's no other steps needed. This person will now be included in reports that you pull, and you can see how many participants you've had initial versus post program, as well as this information will be imported into your applications and annual status reports. And so that's the minimal information required. Again, other things that if you find helpful need to be in Chronicle, you're more than welcome, but those are just your minimal data points in order to aggregate your outcomes here. And if you ever have questions on the minimal data required, if you go to the ERP homepage, which is diabetes.org/ERP, click on the Chronicle Diabetes tab. And then here, we'll see below here, we have already documenting an electronic health record. So if this fits your scenario, you'll have the guide here. And this just walks you through, what data points, the ones we went through. And this is a bit aged, but it's still the same information. Okay, this was brief, but we do have many questions as far as folks, what's required for minimal data entry, and hopefully you find this helpful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email erp@diabetes.org.